Hey everybody, welcome to the Faith and Fandom podcast. I'm Hector Mirai.
And I'm Chris Poirier.
Man, I thought I'd finally gotten that right. I heard a football player called Poirier the other day, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I was like, is that close? Okay.
It's same spelling, just different part of Europe.
Yeah, different part of Europe. Oh, Europeans.
Yeah, you know.
Your zaniness. So, we're here today just discussing, and if you don't remember since the last time, or if this is your first time listening, Chris is tell us what you do at Ultimate Comics.
I'm a store manager of the Cary location of Ultimate Comics. We actually have 3 locations, so I manage our Cary location. And I also do a lot of stuff for NC Comic Con. I am their webmaster, and I do some other things in terms of show logistics and that type of thing. So do things in shop in the retail side, standard comic booky type stuff, but also Comic Con type stuff. And then on the weekends when I've got spare time, I'm currently an assistant pastor at the Point Church in South Raleigh. So, never a dull moment.
Yeah. He's got that life like mine, except he gets paid more to do it.
Yes.
Yes, let's say that. So Chris is a actual functioning comic expert in our community. And so he's part of the Faith and Fandom brand, if that's a thing.
I'm honored to be here as a member of the Faith and Fandom brand.
Yes, that's like 4 of us. So we're gonna start off. We're gonna talk about Batman's run in Tom King's run in Batman right now. I've really enjoyed a lot of that stuff because he's been writing it since #1 of Rebirth, right?
Yeah, no, Rebirth was the team changeover from Scott Snyder doing most of the work there and just making that jump over. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually in Faith and Fandom episode 4, there's a chapter on Tom King's first 12 issues. So there'll more than likely be something on the next ones too. But so what are you liking, like, as from your perspective? Because by and large, most of the time that I've known you, you've been a hashtag make mine Marvel kind of guy.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That prior to Rebirth and everything, I was definitely in all of the X books, reading Daredevil and that type of story. I mean, I was reading Batman. Batman was my DC title. Batman and Flash, completely unapologetic in New 52. And then when Rebirth came out, I probably, like most people, go, okay, I'll read all the arcs, see what I like, and then let go of whatever I don't.
Yeah.
And so I was skeptical going into Tom King's run. Sure, Tom King did awesome stuff at Marvel. The Vision,
which is stuff I never read.
Is okay. You need to pause the podcast right now, run to your local comic book shop, and pick up Tom King's Vision. Read that, and then we can finish the rest of the show appropriately, because that really gives you an image of Tom's just capable of writing interpersonal relationships and also taking the superhero story that's just like bathed in, like Vision was the Avengers, Batman, similar stuff of being in a world of other superheroes, but then talking about just real life. And I think that's what we saw King kind of get to. That I think a lot of us talked about the early branches of Tom King's work in Rebirth was good, but we still kind of felt like, okay, Tom's still trying to figure out where he's going.
Yeah.
And then, we can decide how spoilery we're going to get here, because if people haven't read, then, we're going to get to it.
All right, yeah, we'll put out full of spoilers here. So, you should read these, and that's the thing with comics. Most of the stuff, anything worth really spoiling is going to be spoiled already, mostly.
Yes.
So,
but if you really want to find out some of these cool things, and you've actually not gone to the web of inters, you can pause now and catch up on Tom King's run. But otherwise,
or just skip ahead like 4 minutes.
Right. That we have to talk about the unfolding relationship of Batman and Catwoman, Selena Kyle. That he laid the framework of what was kind of them refinding each other in the Bane arc, which seemed weird at first, but then was probably one of my favorites leading up to literally where we are in real time.
Man, and those 2 issues where they wrote letters.
Yes.
Woo!
I was literally going to say that from a stylistic and from a just in general, we see the human beings of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle as I think a lot of folks have always imagined them.
Yeah.
That those are literally 2 comic books where action is going on in the background of panels.
But it's just background.
But it's literally a letter from Selina to Bruce and Bruce to Selina that's talking about something completely unrelated. But there's no dialogue for the most part in those entire issues other than that. There's very minimal because they do have to move the plot forward in those 2 issues, and they do, but so amazing that I literally got through the 2 of those and went, whoa.
Yeah. And that's, moving on that they, their eventual engagement.
Right.
It was issue 24. It's like sometime in July.
Yep.
I remember I was at a Bible camp in Tennessee when it came out.
I was driving to work, and the talk radio show that has absolutely nothing to do with comics spoiled that issue for me before I even got to work that morning.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
And that's what I meant. Like, if it's anything like actual like ground level stuff, like big stuff, this is gonna get spoiled. Like,
yeah.
I remember, it's just that kind of deal where if it's notable enough that the real world actually pays attention to what's happening in a comic, it's not gonna.
It was like a politics show I listened to, and like in the middle of the news thing, it's like
BT Dubs.
Yeah, Catwoman is engaged to Batman. It's like,
and it was
what?
I'll say it was a little bit of dirty pool too, like because they hit you with that, and then they go into the war of jokes and riddles,
right? And you don't really talk about it for what was it, 6 issues?
Well, no, and that's the thing. He was telling that story,
right? Yes,
to them before before we proceed, you need to know this. And I'm
right.
like, screw you guys. I was like, that was the least enjoyable run. I mean, it
was fascinating. I mean, from the fact that it interrupted what seemed to be like, let's get this done, let's get through all the dirty laundry, and this seemed like we were kind of interrupted in process, and we were.
Yeah.
And King does that too. It's a visceral thing that he does in a lot of his writings of distracting, but it's still related, because the flip side of that, and a lot of us on our side, and also a lot of customers we talk to, is the most fascinating thing about jokes and riddles, Kite Man.
Yeah, and Kite Man was great.
That literally all of us went, who the heck is Kite Man and why do I care? And once you hit the end of that, you go, whoa. That, and I'm sorry if you are a fan of Batman at all and you didn't utter hell yeah after I said Kite Man, then you didn't read this arc the way the rest of us did. Because it was a brilliant twist at the end of that story.
Yeah.
That I was like, wow, that's really good stuff. And Tom also pushed Batman closest to the brink of almost actually finally dealing with that do I kill the Joker issue. And if you want to hate the issue again, it was like that and it was gone.
Yeah.
That for a split second, you're like, Bruce Wayne's Batman's going to kill the Joker.
Well, and the thing too, this is a flashback issue.
Yeah.
So this would have, yeah.
But still, reading it, you're like, whoa, it's gonna,
It just really frustrated my daughter, because like my daughter over the past little while has started reading comics officially, and so like whenever I get books, her thing will be, can I read this one? Can I read this one? Like because like I always pre-read them because some of it's not cool.
Yeah, Teen and Teen Plus really doesn't mean Teen and Teen Plus. It's usually a little harder.
Yeah, and so like she'll like ask, and like I let her read the engagement issue, and like so literally for like 7 months she's like, are they married yet? What's happening? But I'm like, nah, babe, not 7 months, but it's been a while.
And then Jokes and Riddles ends, and we jump right back into Bruce finally goes to the Bat family and tells them.
Yeah, well, and dude, like
it's like what?
And the concept of going to Talia, holy cow!
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
I mean, it's just going to Talia al Ghul to have that conversation. I was like, oh snap, this is gonna be amazing.
And it pretty much played out how you kind of expected, and then Talia just remained Talia.
Yeah,
that there's like 2 really good, well written and very visual fights that occurred during that arc, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I just love that typical Talia at the end of like, you know, they literally like were at each other's throats that whole period. And then she just is like, I like her.
Yeah.
This is good.
Both of them got stabbed a couple times.
Right. And it's like I like her. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And the Bat Hound was in that book. I just have to mention that.
What, Ace?
Yeah, no, the super pets show up and everyone ignores it, and Ace is just chilling in the den when Alfred's like, so I gotta kind of tell you kid something. And just to watch literally, you know, 4 different Robins go, huh, what?
Yeah.
So,
and then,
super good stuff.
But not Catwoman's not the only relationship that's actually been developed.
Right.
And we're getting back, as you had mentioned to me, that of what they're doing with Superman. So tell me about that.
Yeah, and so we're kind of in this process of Batman is now informing everybody of this relationship, which, like we said, we have to imagine a bunch of people are probably like, not surprising, but we hit an issue, which was 36, where we see a conversation
Which,
between...
before we hit 36, the annual, number 2.
That's even before Superman, but
yeah,
talking about Tom King and just being able to write personal stories, Batman Annual number 2 is probably some of his best work since Vision. That I won't spoil that book, but the concept of that it literally has a beginning and an end of a story that sits isolated as an annual, which is what an annual is supposed to do. Annuals will either be a collection of small short stories that are usually outside of continuity.
And I never love those.
Yeah, because sometimes they just become a best of type thing, and sometimes you see folks that had written previous arcs come back, and that's fun. But this is an entire Tom King story from front to back that was just incredibly impressive and talks about the depth of the relationship between the two. And I think that's why he did it, is he wants to establish this is really how much these two are alike and how much these two truly care for one another and how that plays out over a lifetime. I'll give you that little nugget.
It really struck me. Did you watch Dollhouse?
I didn't.
Okay. It's Joss Whedon's Dollhouse.
Yep.
At the end of season 1, because it was only a 2-season show. At the end of season 1, they flash forward to the end of the story, and they play out like where it's all going and everything else. And there's just something really rewarding to see where it's heading. Because like at this point, if you consider that continuity,
I think that's part of the game that King's playing. Is it?
Yeah, is it?
Or is it an annual?
Yeah.
And I think so far it's designed to be. I guess we'll see.
Because if it's continuity, then everything else that we're reading fits into it.
Yep.
That's what makes it kind of beautiful. But I just, I watched my 9-year-old get choked up sitting on a couch.
I'm not afraid to say that I hit the end of that issue and was like, wow. And that a lot of other people said the same thing, that they were like, that was intense.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it was supposed to be. And again, that's what King does really well. And that's what he pulls out of the middle of what otherwise is a superhero story, is these real pieces of real life. And, just transitioning our way back into the Superman thing that's literally where we end up in issue 36, is Superman talking to Lois about why hasn't he called? Of course, everybody knows by now. The Justice League is going to know.
Yeah.
That people are talking about this, and it's like, well, we haven't been invited. And there's a back and forth between Lois and Superman about what does that really mean. But at the same time, on the other side of the same book, Batman and Selina are having the same conversation.
Yep. But on their own little way.
Right. Well, have you told him? Have you invited him yet? And, Selina's kind of like, what gives? He's your friend, right?
Are you ashamed of me?
Right. And so there's all those pieces of the conversation, and it's a brilliant story that's tied together of they're chasing down a lead that ends up bringing them together.
Yeah.
That I won't overly spoil, but I think that was kind of the brilliance of that. And also is quite literally my favorite humorous panel in this series in quite a while.
The elevator.
Yeah. That they both come out of an elevator on the same floor, not knowing they were chasing the same lead, but Lois is with Superman and Selina is with Batman, so these are two women that have also never met, and has been kind of this back end story going on for a while. Because Lois is like, I want to meet her.
Well, here's a struggle point with me on timeline with this, because if I'm not mistaken, Rebirth reinstituted continuity for the most part overall across the DC run, like because like with Detective they went back to original numbering. There are old stories being referenced.
So it's a yes and no, because the reality of Rebirth is more so
Manhattan playing around.
We still don't know.
Yeah.
And technically we could talk about Doomsday Clock next, which kind of ties these issues together. But the minimum is Rebirth technically is a playing out of the events of Flashpoint, which means that some of the things that are going on are still true. Some are not or have been altered. There is a force at play that we still don't know necessarily who is in control. But that's why when they did the button and and the Oz effect, that we're seeing these ripples of very powerful characters that are capable of bending time and space that clearly have been across both or all timelines. If your head just imploded, it means you're keeping up.
But that's, I just, one of my favorite interactions though, like with Lois and Catwoman, which was, when I got to this point, I was like, oh, I really love this interaction. But like when I saw that, I was like, oh, they're not keeping Hush continuity. Because this thing, I've seen Hush stuff referenced.
Sure.
In this, like specific Hush storyline stuff referenced. But like, that was one of my favorite moments in Hush where like Batman told Selina, just go throw somebody from the Daily Planet off the roof. And that she instinctually picked Lois because she could tell. And it's like I was really hoping when
there'd be another comment.
Yeah, like hey, that was a douche move or something.
Right.
Like I was really hoping they were going to throw back to that, but no, it's just I really love their interaction, and it gave me warm fuzzies. Because I feel like that's the relationship we deserve with them.
Yep.
And I know we can't fix all of the DCEU. I know we can't. I know we can't fix the movies where we stand without big shifts. But that was honestly like one of my favorite little moments in Justice League, and I know Chris says he had to watch it.
All that free time. So.
But when Superman triumphantly shows up, like in the story, Batman straight fanboys. like he's like, it is like a take, and I guarantee that's a Whedon said, "Hey, go stand over there and smile real big."
What am I doing?
Just shut up, do it. Just do it. Shut up, Ben, do it.
Put the Big Mac down and do it.
Hey, now he's not hefty. He was in good shape.
He was in Batman shape. That's all that matters.
He was in Batman shape. So no, it's just I really love what they're doing with that. And that's the thing. I was so surprised at how good Tom King was because again, I didn't know who he was. And that's whenever you come off of a big run that you actually enjoy. I think there's that tension of like, okay, what am I in for next when they change teams? Because like Hush was literally my favorite book series, and then I don't even remember who it was. It was the Broken City storyline. But I don't remember who wrote it or drew it. But I was so disappointed to come off of such a great storyline and then to run into that. And I'm like, this is weak sauce. And I just don't want to, I was worried that coming out of not a Rebirth, but New 52, because I mean, people had plenty of beef with New 52 Batman, like with everything with Capullo and Snyder. I know, like with the bunny suit and everything else, I know people had stuff with that, but I was worried of what Tom King was going to bring. But I've been thoroughly impressed, and I'm glad to have him doing books I read, which going on to Mr. Miracle. So I personally, and I shared with you that I'm kind of like starting to drag my feet a little on Mr. Miracle. Like came to the last issue that came out, I'm like, do I really want to keep going? And I'm going to keep going to finish, but you're a little more enthused with it. So Tell me why.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people are seeing in the Mr. Miracle is Tom's writing a story that's a little more in step with the work that he did with the Vision. Of again, we're seeing personal relationship issues, a very deep-seated something's going on in the mind of Mr. Miracle, and we don't quite know what. And that's what we're seeing play out. And we're seeing it played out against the backdrop of Jack Kirby's New Gods. And for a lot of fandom, that means almost nothing. A lot of very hardcore Jack Kirby fans or folks that are familiar with Jack's work are like, yeah, it's the New Gods. It's freaking amazing. And that's great. I wasn't a huge New Gods person. I picked this book up on a flyer of that Tom King's writing it and the promise that this is going to be interesting. So I've had to go back and do my research on the New Gods to really understand some of the backstory. But what's helped me in it is that I think Tom's really playing a trick here. I'm not sure what it is, but the hints are there, and it's kind of real deep New God stuff. So he's rewarding those fans that really understand the continuity. And I think he's drawing the rest of us to potentially picking stuff up we haven't read before, which is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, and there's lots of visual cues in this book, which I'm really happy with so far, is that it's not just, there's a lot of dialogue.
It's like Donnie Darko on a book form.
Yeah, that there's a lot of pieces here that you need to be paying attention to, or just fun in general. Because the other thing is...
Well, like the couch scene. Man, I literally was like, what am I reading? Why is this a thing? Veggie tray.
I brought a veggie tray.
Yeah.
He's literally being brought up on charges of treason to represent himself, and Big Bart is like, I will buy a veggie tray. And it's like, what is going on
That's the thing.
In his living room?
I would love to have just like a soccer mom style book following Big Barda.
Who knows? And I think that'd be great too, because Barda's been like on point this entire series.
But that's what I would love to see. I would love to see Barda interacting with the DC females and literally like brunch with Lois, like cardio with Catwoman. I mean,
and she's like a total warrior. Otherwise, like the other side of her being is just she's the berserker. She's the wreck house character, and it's been so fun in this series from that. But also, other than that, being self-aware is the other thing that this book is just like fascinating with.
Yeah,
and has been done through dialogue, and to the point of a lot of the characters are clearly fans of other DC. Like, there's multiple instances of other characters or Mr. Miracle himself wearing Batman t-shirts, Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Or there's mugs that are present in other things. And they're just also self-aware of their reality, which has just been fun. And that's why I'm questioning the reality that Tom King is presenting us.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to play out. So for folks that are either completely lost, I think you should hang on, because I think a reveal's coming. I don't know when, but I've seen too many pieces of what appears now that we should be questioning the reality that we're reading and seeing in real time. And it's underpinned by the reality that we know Darkseid is out there somewhere and is definitely the big bad, but for right now, King is doing what King does really well.
Where is Darkseid currently in DC continuity?
I'm not 100% sure.
Because the last glimmer I saw of Darkseid, and I believe it is Rebirth, I think it has to be, was in Trinity.
Could be. I'm not reading Trinity currently. So.
Well, it was the first 6 issues or so. Yeah, because John's in it, Superman's kid, so it's Rebirth. But Darkseid implanted himself into like some kid version.
Oh, right. And that makes a ton more sense now. So because Baby Darkseid is referenced in Mr. Miracle a few times.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Because they used Poison Ivy and Darkseid to create this life form kid thing. that was it. That's like on its own. So yeah, and I think it's like in its own stream of consciousness too.
So and that makes sense for where, like I said, it's very visceral, very mind bending type story that's being told, but that's very New Gods, and I think that's
honestly, I don't think I've read a New God story since Final Crisis with Grant Morrison. And that's like,
and that's about as mind bending as you can get.
Yeah, that really is. All right, so for those of you who are literally completely lost and want to understand something that doesn't sound like gibberish, tell us about. Well, you work with the Ultimate Comics crew in general, and that includes NC Comic Con and Oaks. So many names now.
Yes.
NC Comic Con Bull City, which is Durham.
Yep.
NC Comic Con Oak City, which is Raleigh, and also Greensboro.
Right, which we're starting to roll out. We had our first show last September in Greensboro, so we're up to 3 shows a year. So when a show ends, it feels like the next one begins.
But this was your first time really, like, being a big dog, so to speak, with the microphone and telling people where to go.
Yeah.
And an earpiece looking like you're working at Toys R Us, or, Old Navy or something.
Right.
Pulling
out extra pairs of pants.
So how was the experience of running a show on that level? How did that affect you? What did you learn from it?
Oh, wow.
How was that as a life experience?
I pulled out a lot of old stops of old life of remembering how to actually calendar things and do time management and do it well. Because between, we had to keep the stores running on top of actually planning out these things. And I initially came onto the NC Comic Con team primarily to focus on digital media, social media, marketing, and their website. I carry the title of webmaster. That nccomiccon.com has been my baby for the last 6+ months now, and we're going through a lot of changes there. Not how I'm classically trained, something that I was mostly self-taught to do, so I find that fun to do because it's something that I've learned to do and is something I enjoy doing, but also stressful when you're against a timeline and cross-section of bosses and needing stuff to get up and get done so that you guys, the fans, can know what's going on, who's coming, where you're going, how to buy tickets, all that fun stuff. So that was an interesting part of it. And then on day of, to literally be handed most of, if power went to it, technology was related, that I had to make sure that it got to where it needed to be and be done. We had lots of partners and other contractors that helped us with that, so that was huge. But just kind of fighting the fire of day of stuff breaks, fix it, kind of stuff. So it was surreal.
I kind of want to run a show someday, like in the back of my mind. I think that, but I also look at like the stress level that includes with that, and I'm like, I don't know if I want that.
And there's so much to it that I wasn't even directly in terms of inviting guests, hoping guests actually come, managing said guests once they do come, then figuring out panels that we have people that are doing each of these little pieces. So we have a panel coordinator.
That was Matt, right?
Matt Connor, truly a great guy, customer.
He worked well with me with.
Matt is truly, we're blessed to have him in our empire of sorts, that he's really good at moderating. He's great at putting like personalities together, or if you don't even have a complete idea for a panel, he'll help you get there, and kind of walk through that process. That he's really dedicated to that and getting a very large cross-section of topics to the stage, which is why, all of our shows, I do God in Comics. You did a new thing at this last show. We have things that are like game show type things, to diversity in comics, to all kinds of different types of topics that are just being covered and everything. So, and that's only part of it. That's only part of the little discussion that we have, because then we have 2 people that manage just our guests, which is day of type stuff. Yeah, making sure they actually get to said panels, or that they're fed, have water, are actually enjoying themselves and whatnot. And then we have a guy that does nothing but our sales and logistics of vendor tables and artists, where they go, how they go, and all that. So it's a small army that's kind of been put together, and we grow each and every year. just had our first official meeting for Oak City, which will be in March, last night. So, like I said, it's a process that just never stops.
Before we go into Oak City, though, like, do you feel like, and I'm not asking you to like give a negative on your show or anything, do you feel like there's anything you personally could have done better?
Personally, myself,
just you and what you were doing.
Yeah, I think, and it's what I've learned going into the next show, is that I'm going to start my planning arc for even the website. Well, I already did, to answer that question. That if I can be 3+ months out from a show and really know what stuff I need, who I need it from, and an idea of a schedule of getting things up is literally what I did. What we learned from building the last website, I literally poured into the new one immediately so that I could get to a lot of the first show last year, because it was my first site build for this show. I was fixing stuff as we learned it. Now we've learned most of those lessons, so I literally put the skeleton in place that we can now put the data on it as we get it. So that was a huge thing for us, so we think we'll be better at getting more information out faster this time.
So Oak City is coming up in March. That's what,
17th and 18th.
17th and 18th. And so, like, what's new? What do you got planned? What's going on?
So Oak City, this will be the third year at the Raleigh Convention Center. It's been a show that's been going on longer than that. It was a one-day show. It was just in a hotel for a few years, and then we went to the 2-day 2 years ago, and then that was Raleigh Convention Center. But then last year we doubled the amount of square footage that we were for that show. So we got our feet under us, and so we're still establishing what that looks like in Raleigh. We've been doing Bull City now for 8+ years. So we've taken a lot that we learned from that venue into this, but just reaching the Raleigh fandom, as we've learned, Raleigh and Durham, though close, are different cities. We have some
culture.
Overlap of folks, but there are some people that are not going to come past Durham for a show, and vice versa. So
that surprised me so much.
Yeah,
because
we're surprised.
I'm used to being, I live in the middle of nowhere, so I'm used to driving an hour or 2 hours to get somewhere.
If I could be somewhere in 3 hours, I usually consider that a good day.
Yeah.
And that's most of North Carolina, except way out west, but different story. That as we learn what the vibe of a city is, we're trying to make content that makes sense for that location. And that's kind of been what we've done. That even Greensboro was a different show. And as we learn these pieces, we're putting that into place so that folks that are in those cities come and get the experience that they want. And I think the big thing, especially talking last night, is we really want to focus on fandoms. We think Raleigh has...
focus on fandoms, how so?
Not just... some shows are just comic shows. Some shows are comics and vendors shows. Some are, no holds barred, everything. Cosplay, comics, collecting, panels. And we think we really want to explore being a fandom type show that we really celebrate all those things. Our Durham show, by contrast, we usually refer to as a creator-based show. That we try to bring a lot of local creators, people that are doing really good work as writers and as artists, that we can celebrate as many creators as possible. And that's got a different vibe from a collector show or a cosplay show, because it's going to be mostly folks that are doing writing, folks that are doing art. So there's a huge focus on that. For Raleigh, because we have the space, we really want to expand into some of the other things that are going on.
Is Raleigh a bigger space than Durham?
Tons bigger.
Okay.
We're almost at capacity in Durham. So, yeah, square footage, I'd have to look at it, but it's pretty significant in the amount of folks that we can fit in the space.
Okay.
So that means that we can celebrate a little more. Also, bigger displays for some folks that are looking for them. And also have more room between vendors and everything. Like, if I learned anything from being in this space for even only a year, the amount of space between tables at an event can have a huge impact, because you're either people on top of people or a little breathing room. And what Raleigh does give us is a ton of breathing room.
Yeah, there is more breathing room at Oak City, right?
Yeah, there's almost only about 6 feet to 8 feet, something like that, between aisles, where in Raleigh it's almost double that. And that's why we doubled our space in Raleigh, because the first year it was very tight as well. That we learned that we've got the vendors, we have folks that want to bring content. We also celebrate publishers a little more in Raleigh. So they will bring larger setups and to be able to show their cross-section of stuff, do portfolio reviews and that type of thing.
Okay.
And then, the stage space at Raleigh is huge.
I don't think I've ever seen the stage.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where you were set up before, because it's like all the way on the other side.
Yeah, because most of the Raleigh show, I've never actually left my booth outside of bathroom.
All right, we should work on that. Because the stage space is kind of fun for where in Durham we separate it out to the Armory.
Yeah,
we have that equivalent amount of space in the same vendor space in Raleigh. So the cosplay contest and everything is actually on the show floor. And some of the bigger events that we do will be on the show floor.
I always think cosplay contests are better on the show floor.
Well, what's been great and what we learned from last year, where we did some bigger events, is where there's events that require or elicit a crowd response. The entire convention hears that in this space, and so we're definitely thinking more about what more can we do for that.
Yeah, my friend LJ runs the Nerd Slams.
Yeah,
and this year was the first year we did it on the main stage at Fayetteville, and to have several hundred people sitting directly in front of you while you're doing that was pretty amazing. So I can imagine it'd be pretty awesome to do your cosplay contest and everything over there.
Yeah, so LJ, you should definitely contact us and talk about pitching Nerd Slam for Oak City. I will just go ahead and say that right now, that I think that would be a fun thing for us to talk about. So definitely get in touch, either with myself, Hector, or reach out on the website, and that's the main thing for a lot of you folks that are local is our panels aren't like we go out and handpick. We take solicitations that if you've got an idea.
Dude, I was so scared to submit panels for so long.
I know, and I think what we've really told people is, if it's a good idea, we want to have the talk.
Well, I got shut down by another show, air quotes, because they didn't want the heat of Jesus being attached to anything.
Fascinating. I mean, that's. Part of me gets it, but...
Well, I get it, and here's the thing, I get it, but, most of the people that would be concerned about that don't know what we do.
Right. There's that, and, I mean, it's like I was saying, it's the thing that we really try to do and do well with NC Comic-Con is diversity, just not in, air quotes around diversity, what we've all made diversity mean, but literally being diverse in we have a God in Comics panel, and we have for the last 4 shows.
Yeah.
Side by side with straight up normal diversity panels, next to LGBT-based panels, next to horror panels, next to creator-owned content panels of, if it makes sense and we think that there's a fandom and that we know that, all of it's going to be covered respectfully. Yeah. That's a big thing you need to know. And it's wide open that we're not necessarily afraid of that, as long as we know that it's going to be for all the right reasons. We're not doing something specifically just to be spiteful or to elicit some type of response, but that it's something that we know that there is a fan base for, that they'd be interested in, that other people may be interested to find out what that even means. And I think that's been our biggest thing from God in Comics, is just trying to be that, come hear what we have to say.
Well, that's even from my panels at other shows as well. Has been people that are coming because they're curious. They want to have that discussion.
Yeah. And I think we do a pretty good job of creating a fairly safe space, not air quotes safe space, but safe space that
does everyone wear a safety pin when they come?
Absolutely. I mean, maybe, because I don't want to get down on anybody's funny space, but I get what you mean.
But I mean, that was the thing, not this NC Comic-Con, but the NC Comic-Con before.
Yes.
People were passing out the safety pins, and I wore one, and then the lady who she did Faith.
Jody Hauser.
Jody Hauser came by my booth and complimented me.
Yeah.
for wearing a safety pin, like on my hat, and I'm like, well, thank you, Jody Hauser.
Right, Jody.
And then we got into like not a heated discussion, but there's a tad bit of snark because
Sure.
Over Firefly.
Oh, really? She's a huge fan.
Oh, she is a huge fan, but she tried to nerd explain to me something.
Interesting.
And well, because she also, I don't know if you know, she wrote the Orphan Black comics.
Yeah, she did a lot of stuff with IDW. She had that piece. I mean, other than Faith, she's also the primary writer on Mother Panic, on the Young Animals. So her cross-section of writing chops is absolutely insane.
But when she came by the booth, I mentioned, I was like, I really love what you did with Helena in your book. And I was like, she's like the River Song of Orphan Black. She's like, you mean River Tam from Firefly? I'm like, no, I mean River Song, because she's a psycho who loves people enough that she'll beat you to death if she has to, because she cares that much. And the curls. But I was like, yeah, I got this girl. But she was super cool. But no, and I think NC Comic Con really, and Oak City have really done that good job of creating that space, and shout out to Will and the folks that have been doing the God and Comics panel, because they've done a really good job with that. So we've covered this. One more thing I'm going to hit: Batman Metal. Batman Metal. I know we've talked about it some on the show and on here before, and it's one of the most interesting pieces that I honestly wanted to discount it the first time I heard of it, just because I thought it was going to be some lame thing, that it was going to be a cheap gimmick.
I think that's fair, because I think whenever DC, Marvel, any major publisher presents an event, even the retailers sit there and go, please be good, please be good, please be good. Because events are that thing. It's designed to be the entire world comes together for this thing, and it's supposed to be important. And you need to read every single book that comes out with it. So everyone's like, oh, cool.
I mean, that kind of event is what got me off of comics for 10 years.
Right, and a lot of people...
The Spider-Man Clone Wars.
Yeah. No, and there's a lot of discussion between a lot of the publishers of who's the worst at it and that kind of thing. And it's a terrible discussion because, A, comics are great. They should be great. And I've been telling people I'm very much taking the Kevin Smith approach to a lot of things, like DC movies or anything that we feel slightly about. Is I'm thankful for being in a moment in time that comics have finally reached a point so mainstream that finally everyone is excited to see it in whatever iteration that we see it in. That we should be thankful that DC is making movies. Sure, we can cringe from time to time and we can talk about the pieces we don't like, but there was a time, less than a decade ago, that this would never have happened.
No.
And
right.
And the reality of that is eventually that bubble's going to burst, and it's probably going to go away as quickly as it showed up. So Kevin always says in interviews, he goes, I could beat DC up for whatever, I could beat Marvel up for whatever, but instead I'm going and seeing that movie 4 freaking times because my favorite characters are finally on screen, and for better or worse, I get to experience that. And
that's what me with Justice League. I was like, I get to see Batman and the Justice League on screen together. And which is why I know I'm not an unbiased opinion when it comes to Justice League, because I get to see it. Listen, if they put Red Hood on screen, I'm not going to care. I'll complain about it. I'll whine, but I'll be excited.
So I think the same is true with comics. I try to take the same approach. And Metal, when we first heard the pitch, we're like, that sounds a little crazy for a mainstream event. You guys really are going to go dark multiverse on us, and that's the main pitch. And in the same breath, it's not really continuity because we are throwing back to random multiverse stuff. So
yeah,
everyone, the flip side of an event is, what's the impact? And they kind of led with, well, technically there is none, but we want to tell a really cool story, so here it is. And when I finally embraced that and went, maybe that's a brilliant thing in comics more than a bad thing, of finally a bunch of people saying, no, we really want to tell this story. Here are the parameters of said story, and then just tell it.
Just tell it.
I sit there and go, pick it up if you want to read this story. If not, then you're not missing anything. And I think that's important. And I've had this conversation with some folks in terms of how some publishers do events. Is the one thing I give DC a lot of credit for here is you will not be punished for not reading this event. There's a lot of events that occur in other places, and DC's done it as well, is this is a universe-changing event. Which
and
means
if you don't read
it, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You could have potentially missed something huge. That I really like this new concept of isolated minis. There are other minis that are going on in DC's environment that are, no, this is a story we just really wanted to tell. And I think that's great. And I want to see more of that in comics because it allows creators to be creative. It doesn't break continuity. And you get a cool story and go, wow, like White Knight. We won't go down that. It's not a continuity story. But so far it is freaking brilliant.
But I wish it was continuity.
Right? So
it's so good.
So the flip side of that is the one thing that I will say on Metal that is not me just being an unapologetic retailer, but a fan, is Metal is an event you actually do need to read every book. It won't break continuity, but if you really want to appreciate the dark multiverse story that's being interwoven here, the little minis that they did, Bats Out of Hell.
Tell me about that one, because you mentioned it and I didn't know who was in that.
So that was mostly, let's see, Bats Out of Hell was mostly Flash. See, what they're doing is the mainline story is telling you the greater arc of Barbados using the Batman Who Laughs to kind of orchestrate this event that's occurring. And to pick apart the existing Justice League so that they can institute whatever they're seeking to pull the dark multiverse in.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. And then the one-shots introduce us to all of the other Batmans, which are literally the personifications of Bruce Wayne's
Now,
worst...
is Gotham Resistance the Jon Snow Nightwing?
Yes.
Okay. Because in one of the Batman Metal issues or whatever, it's
they show it.
And they actually refer to him as Jon Snow
Yep.
Nightwing, and I'm like, all right, I see where you at. Because literally, that one line almost made me buy a book, because I'm like, Jon Snow Nightwing? What?
Because literally they were doing the whole thing of trying to rid the access point that was emerging in Gotham out. So that was Gotham Resistance, was Nightwing coming together, Damian Robin being faced with his team being captured. So he was going through a Robin moment, and then, you have Nightwing sitting there going, let's talk about some of this. So there was even some good moments in
Nightwing
there.
and Damian, though, man, because can I just say I miss, and I don't want to go back to it, but I miss Dick as Batman and not Damian as Robin. Like, their stuff together, because, there was a throwback to that in Batman 36.
Yes. And a similar storyline came out of this, of Damian losing his bravado for at least a millisecond because he was so conflicted with his team being captured.
And that's in Gotham Resistance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With his team being captured, that Dick was finally doing okay, you have to understand what leadership actually looks like. And going back to being that mentor figure again. And what was even crazier was you have Green Arrow overlapping into that story and similarly providing some of that leadership mentorship through that story, which was just brilliant. That you see these guys that had, we'd be led to believe were self-built, but truly were built by the mentors in their lives. And kind of having that moment in Damian. So I thought that was great. And Bats Out of Hell is the other side, which is more Flash-centric, of them. What you learn as you kind of go through the pieces in Metal is that Cyborg actually was captured early, and that his processing units, etc., are being used by the dark multiverse to some end. And so the other side, Bats Out of Hell, is also Bruce really coming to terms with where he is or isn't in this universe, because things are all messed up from that perspective. So it's been the Flash kind of bouncing back and forth between those pieces of Batman being lost, which led into Batman Lost.
Which I did read that.
Okay. And the Justice League also trying to figure out the Cyborg piece of the thing, which is where we then get plugged back into Metal Mainline, where we are again. So I've read events where you're like, cool, I don't care about any of the tie-ins because you're just going to tie this event into my continuity. I'm going to feel really lost for 2 months, which is a marketing tool for you to want me to go buy the event, more so than the other way around, where this one I stopped and went, oh, you actually... It wasn't that the story was on the edge involved. It is the story.
Well, and that's I think we mentioned earlier that the main book, the actual Batman Metal,
you'd feel pretty lost.
You'd feel really lost without it. And I can say personally, I feel like it's the weakest out of the series. Like I get the least out of those.
It feels like the minimal amount that needs to be said to keep the story going.
Yeah.
It's just usually the opposite of what's supposed to be.
Because, even with, Blackest Night, because I think that's the last real DC crossover I read, maybe, of universe-expanding DC crossover, was which was a great one, too. I have no complaints with that. But you could read just Blackest Night and get away with it. If you wanted to get a good story, you needed to read Blackest Night and Green Lantern. But then when you threw all the tie-ins together, because the one that was Blackest Night with Batman and Nightwing, where it actually dealt with the Flying Graysons. Holy cow, that was gangster. But yeah, so I've enjoyed Metal, and White Knight, and that's the thing. You've got all these side stories off of the bat. Right now, I'm buying 3-4 Batman books a month, which I'm not complaining. But yeah, one question I just wanted to ask you, totally off topic.
Boom.
How does manga sales transpire in your stores? Is that a frequent thing? Is that a...
So I would say the number of people that come in and ask is actually increasing a fair amount across all of our properties. Attempting to meet that demand is much more complicated, because it's not like your standard comic book subscriber that is going to show up every week no matter what. They seem to be a little more...
Because there's 3-4 months in between.
Sure, there's that type of issue, and there's also people that just listen to their favorite podcast or heard from school from somebody that read something. So there's a lot in the American market. There's a lot of folks that are catching up. So it's been difficult for us to try to figure out what do we keep on the shelf. So we're expanding. We had nothing. As little as 6 months ago, to trying to figure out what are the must-reads that people are going to start on. Because honestly, there's a ton of material, and it'd be hard for us to keep a lot of everything when I maybe see someone once a week.
Yeah.
So we're trying to increase either our ability to get, which is getting better, and also just having what most people would say is either what's hot right now, or is the staples that absolutely have to be represented for people to jump in and get started. And we think we're doing a lot better with that. So yeah, no, it's an interesting market space. It's a different fandom.
Well, that train sound is time for us to conclude. Thank you for listening. Thank you for checking out. I'm excited. I have a break. I don't have any shows until February.
Woo!
So that's going to be nice. Unless I push myself and end up doing something else. Chris has obviously comic stuff coming up, and he's building up towards Oak City. And I have to write. That's where I'm at. I'm currently... finishing the second chapter of book 5 that's actually written, because I have lots of notes
right
and stuff, but actually typing it out and I'm doing one. The next one I'll finish writing is one on Tribbles. I've not done Star Trek yet.
That's a good point.
I've done 4 books and no Star Trek, and
so you've gotten some letters.
I've got
some discontent from fandom.
I've gotten some snark. But then
so Star Wars is better than Star Trek, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh.
On a lot of levels. It's my podcast. I can say it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I do enjoy Star Trek. But Star Trek only started its movie franchise because they were trying to keep up with Star Wars.
Oh.
Which was said by the executive producer. I'm not making that up.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You can reach Hector at Faith and Fandom on Facebook for any comments that you may have.
But yeah, so I don't even know what I was talking about now. But yeah, I'm writing that. But one of our avid readers and supporters and overall general awesome people, Miss Sarah Miller. She's out of the Fayetteville area, but she's one of the. She would be Team Faith and Fandom too. She'd be on the roster. But she saw that it was on the list of stuff we were going to write about. She's like, "Can you finish that early and send it as my Christmas present?" So that's my end game. I'm trying to finish the triple chapter and get it to her by Christmas. Which, by the way, this may be the last podcast until Christmas. So Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And if you're listening to this whatever year, and if it's like June or April, Merry Christmas in advance.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah, you don't know.
Cover the bases.
But thanks again for spending time with us, and we hope you have a great day.